Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Clark. It's nice to see you. My pronouns are she, her. And I am not Reverend Deborah. But she does send a message that I'd like to share with you. Greeting, Inner Light. I am on a much needed mini vacation. During these extraordinary times, remember to self-care. This is especially true for those of us on the front line who continue to work, those struggling, and for those caring for others. Just like as if we were on an airplane, put your own mask on first. Clearly, our protracted approach to COVID in the US has us in the throes in this virus for some time to come. It will take much stamina and spiritual groundedness to pull through this together. Then she is very sweet. She says, "It is my pleasure to invite Kim Clark to be our speaker today. No doubt you will be nourished and inspired. See you next week. Peace and blessings." I'm feeling no pressure whatsoever whenever I'm up here covering for Rev D. I'm so glad she's role modeling that for us. Self-care is absolutely incredibly important. The last time I was here, it was Pride Sunday. It was just a month ago, actually, and we were talking about vitality, and the topic was "We Are Vital," and it ended up being a talk about allyship. And over 6,100 people have viewed it on Facebook, which is a lot for my talks. So thank you for setting a new record and for watching it, for sharing it. And if you haven't seen it, please watch it. I've been inundated by requests to turn it into a class. And you met Ganane at the beginning of service, and her husband actually left me a very lengthy voicemail saying something similar. And so I'm certainly looking at doing that because I didn't realize that what I said was going to hit the heart for so many, particularly white people. And a lot of people of color have reached out to me as well saying, please do a class for white people. So that just might happen. All design timing and in the right order. This month's theme is joy. And the topic is deliberately expressing my joy. Now, this was kind of a recent decision on Rev D to go on this trip. And so she wrote the affirmations and she chose the topic. And I was thinking through, like, deliberately expressing my joy. Okay, what does that look like for me? I have some work to do around this, I'll be honest. The theme of every month, Rev D chooses a spiritual quality. Spiritual qualities are things that exist with or without us being conscious of it or even active in it. And so spiritual qualities could be connection, it could be community, it could be grace, love, hope, joy, peace. And these spiritual qualities are what makes prayer with Inner Light practitioners so special. Because the spiritual qualities are actually what's behind what we pray for. So the way we train each other on how to do prayer here at Inner Light, especially as practitioners, is while you're doing prayer, you might be praying for a thing or a person or something, but there's something behind it. And that's typically a spiritual quality. So what is the spiritual quality behind whatever it is that you might ask for prayer for right now? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Because I could use some prayer around my deliberate expression of joy. I'm looking at the context from which we are living right now. COVID-19, still in the US. More millions of people have filed for unemployment. We are coming up on a presidential election. I am speaking on the morning of when Congressman John Lewis's body is being taken across the Selma, Alabama bridge from which he marched across. He is crossing the bridge for the last time this morning. We lost two civil rights greats back to back last week. We have a Supreme Court justice who is being treated for cancer, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We are in a time of presidential election. We are in a time where everything is unknown. Everything. We are at a time when masks, which have been utilized effectively in Asian countries for a long time, we have a lot to learn from using masks. The masks in the United States have become politicized when it's actually a public health concern. It's actually something to wear in solidarity and saying that I care about you. But it's become political, which is fascinating to me, that masks, something that is of public health concern, has become political. Portland is on day 59 of protests since George Floyd's murder. Federal agents have come into Portland just last night, early morning hours, 1:30 in the morning, tear gas. The protesters are now bringing leaf blowers to blow the tear gas back. But it's still happening. The protests have become more dangerous for everybody, not just physically, but psychologically, and for some, perhaps spiritually, but definitely mentally. They stem from this calling out to the end of white supremacy, to be anti-racist. Because racism, too, is a public health concern. Marianne Williamson, who was an author, she's a speaker, and last year she ran as a Democratic presidential candidate who spoke on reparations, and now that's a new topic again. She has this really interesting analogy where she talks about there's only love. And the way that she visualizes that for us is that love is on a spectrum, just like all the spiritual qualities are on a spectrum. If you have a lot of love, then you shine bright, like a light switch. But if you're not feeling the love, if you're not expressing the love, then you have a lower volume of love. And then it becomes darker, it's dimmer. And that's where fear tends to take over. So love is like a light switch on a spectrum, on a dimmer switch. You can amplify it, bring in the light, fear dissipates, or we can lower that vibration, dim our love, and then only see darkness. Now, all the spiritual qualities are on a spectrum, joy as well. So when we talk about racism, there's a spectrum for racism as well. We've got the more overt, the more seen, KKK, etc. Get somewhere in the middles, and that's where that entitlement mindset that the memes are calling Karens and Kevins. And then we go over here, and then it's more about microaggressions, where we're in the workplace or in our homes, and we just have these little jabs that we throw out. I used the example last month around a white person saying to a black person how articulate they are when they're doing a presentation or telling a story. And it's harmful. All of it is harmful. And then there's unconscious bias, where there's a lot of white folks, including me, where I didn't know how complicit I have been my entire life to systemic racism. I didn't know. I didn't know that my silence was complicity. And I didn't have the awareness. It was unconscious. So I'm doing the work. I'm doing the work now. And my whole talk last month was about, we need to do the work. We have to do the work. It's urgent. And racism isn't political, although it tries to be framed as being political, just like masks, it's a public health concern. It's about human rights. It has nothing to do with political party. It's about basic human rights. And it's up to us in determining what our morals are on where we stand. Are we going to speak up? Portland is speaking up. Lots of people are speaking up in their way. And a lot of people are freezing. That's one response. And some people are doing flight, where it's like, let's just get back to normal and everything will be fine. No, it's not. So I'm not going to let this topic go. So I'm in this context, just like you are, with all this going on. This is the content that Rev D talks about. There's life happening. So, how interesting that she chooses joy as the theme. And then the call to action of deliberately expressing our joy, even in the midst. Well, I'm super inspired. I am really inspired by stories of people who are deliberately expressing their joy, even in the midst. And it shows up for me in different ways. If you were to Google Kimberly Jones Monopoly, if you Google that video and watch that video, you're going to see someone who is so on point. And at the end, she says, Black people don't want revenge. They want equality. To me, that is inspiring. Because what if they wanted revenge, which they have every right to, considering the last 400 years in the United States? The oppression, the humiliation. I'm also inspired by someone my sister introduced me to. Her name is Oshita Moore. She's a pastor, I believe, out of Michigan. You can catch her on Instagram. Right before Juneteenth, which was the middle of June, she did a photo series that she hashtagged. Is that a word? Hashtagged? That she hashtagged Blackjoy. And it was the photo series of these children being themselves, clearly in connection with the divine. They're playing with bubbles. They have their eyes closed and they're just kind of in their own world, hearing their own melody, just dancing. No one's around. Everyone's doing their own thing and they're just like, but in my life, in my world, it's good. There's a song in my heart. I'm inspired by that. Because I don't know if I would handle epigenetics of trauma after generation in the way that I have found to be so respectful, so admirable, so profound. So this is part of why I struggle with deliberately expressing my joy. I'm not sure how to, but I have role models from people who have it far worse than I do. Far worse. I'm moved by that. Now, clearly, when I think of joy, I think of like, okay, let's just say I'm not going to be chosen on The Price is Right. All right? I'm not going to be the one who screams from my seat all the way down to the stage, waving my hands frantically, screaming. And when I get up on stage and, there's, saying that you won this thing and I'm just going to lose my mind and stuff like that. I'm not that kind of person. That's not how I express my joy. And again, there's a spectrum of how people express their joy. How I express my joy is a totally unplanned, spontaneous dance party with my son. He will turn on a song and he will start dancing. He has zero rhythm, zero beat, and I'm right there with him. I'm loving every second of it. How I also express my joy is whenever I order food these days, I give a huge tip because I can. I am privileged to be able to be working right now. And I want to pass that on for those who may be barely making it. What does expressing joy look like for you? Because yes, we have all this going on. Yes, we have infections going up. Yes, yes, yes. And there's still joy. There's still babies being born. There's still people being married. There's still people happy. And so what are we bringing to the table? What are we contributing? We don't have to be seen as the Price is Right participant, audience member, screaming in order to show our joy. How do you do it? And if you have paper and a pen, I would love for you to pull that out right now. I run a support group every Friday morning for communicators, for employee communicators in organizations. It's free. I just do it because I care about internal communicators. And it's a support group. And then we end the support group every Friday morning with a poll that says, what are you going to do to take care of yourself this week? And there's power down, there's play, there's sing, there's meditate, there's give gratitude. There's a list of like 8 of them. And I ask you, it's like what Rev D is doing this week. What are you going to do to take care of yourself? Because here's the thing, folks. We need to be deliberate in expressing our joy right now. Because it's so easy to be caught up in what's happening and be distracted off the big picture, off of our vision. We are made in the image and the likeness of the divine. We are the voice, we are the hands, we are the feet, we are the presence. These spiritual qualities that I talked about, they happen through us. Peace doesn't happen unless it happens through us. We're the ones that have to bring the joy. We're the ones that have to bring the love. So if you look at, going back to racism, what are some of the spiritual qualities that are beneath racism that needs to be healed? And going to the example of a spectrum, let's say spiritual qualities underneath racism could be love, connection, forgiveness. So when we look at something that's going on, just like I was talking about at the beginning of like this, when we do prayer, we tend to pray for things or people or situations. But we need to be looking at what are the spiritual qualities below that that need to be amplified, that need to be heard, that need to be expressed. So if forgiveness is one of the spiritual qualities underneath racism, how do we amplify that? How do we give that voice? How do we lift our vibration around that? Because that, my friends, is where the healing is. And it cannot happen without us. Because it happens only through us. That's my call to action. Today is short and sweet. I want to be really, really direct. That we have to transcend what's happening and not lose sight by being distracted by how things are being framed. We have to look at what's going on and say, what is my role in this? How can I contribute? You can contribute by wearing a mask. You can contribute by praying. You can contribute by looking at different spiritual qualities and seeing what is underneath what's happening right now that is begging to be revealed and healed. And what's my role in that? Because I need you. I need me. So my work, my homework right now is to let myself loose a little bit around deliberately expressing my joy. I can be too serious. My mom used to call me the thinker when I was younger. I'm in my head a lot. Being around kids has really opened me up. What is it for you? Because joy has nothing to do with circumstances. It's what we're bringing to the table. And while I feel it in my own way, I know I need to amplify it. Because that's going to bring more healing, not only to myself, but to others. And that's our point, is to be a place and a space of possibility and healing. I think that's all I got to say today.